What you are seeing here is one of the most impactful things to ever happen to the Pokemon franchise, and no one is talking about it. It's something that could drive down the price of retro Pokemon games, and also for some people, give them no need to wait for GameFreak to re-release GBA or DS Pokemon games. Because for the first time ever, with absolutely no modding of either phone or console needed, Pokemon caught using an emulator on a phone can now directly trade with official Nintendo DS hardware and software. Now, there is so much to unpack in this video, but first, for legal reasons, piracy is a crime and you should always support the official releases of video games where possible. This video is for educational purposes only and obviously can't explain how to obtain game ROMs, but you can figure that out easily enough yourself. Finally, GameFreak, Nintendo, don't shoot the messenger. Please don't come after me. I have a wife and kid. Now, with that out of the way, the emulator that will be doing all of the magic in this video is Delta Emulator, which is solely available for free on Apple iOS and iPadOS. For those on Android, the steps in this video to transfer Pokemon will be the same as on iOS. However, there are currently no Android DS emulators in the Play Store with online support at the time of making this video. Supposedly, MelonDS emulator does work online if downloaded from outside the Play Store, but in terms of downloading from an official app store with no external help needed, Delta on iOS has you covered. I've never personally owned an Android phone, so Android users, feel free to share your experience in the comments. Now, this video will cover everything you need to know to be able to trade Pokemon from Gen 3, Gen 4, and Gen 5 games from an iPhone to a Nintendo 3DS specifically. It'll also show you how to access old Gen 4 and Gen 5 event Pokemon. I've included timestamps for each gen if you'd like to jump straight to a specific part of this video, but before I get into it, full credit for this incredible achievement goes to Delta app developer Riley Testit. Riley is essentially the godfather of video game emulation on iOS. A little backstory, in 2013-2014, he first developed GBA for iOS, a Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance emulator while he was still in high school, which eventually led to the release of Delta Emulator in 2019, which added support for NES, SNES, 64, and later Nintendo DS. For 5 years, this app could only be installed onto iPhone and iPad by unofficially sideloading it through the Alt Store, also created by Riley. It wasn't until early 2024 Apple finally were forced to allow Delta and many other emulators onto its official app store in most regions. Sorry, EU. Which brings us to April 2025, where Riley has added probably the most game-changing feature of all in Delta 1.7, online multiplayer. Something intended for between two phones, but incidentally also possible with a DS. Now, you may find yourself asking, wasn't Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection, the service that allowed online play for Nintendo DS and Wii from 2005 to 2014, discontinued? That is indeed correct, but that brings us to the key component of what this video will be showing off, DNS exploitation. Now, using the method known as the DNS exploit, which has famously allowed Nintendo DS's access to old event Pokemon in Gen 4 and Gen 5, is nothing new. It has been and still is possible to do directly from a Nintendo DS even today. Now, to put it as best as I can, by entering custom settings into the DNS option in your DS's Wi-Fi settings, when it tries to connect to Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, it gets redirected to a third-party gateway. And then through magic, which I'm not even going to pretend to understand, gets tricked into thinking it is actually connected to the official Nintendo Wi-Fi connection server, something which no longer exists. Through exploits like this, it makes it possible to host past online Pokemon mystery gift distributions through Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. Now, while you have to manually input these settings into the DS's Wi-Fi menu, for Delta Emulator on iPhone, there are now several Wi-Fi connection servers built in, which you can activate in the app's settings. Now, for this video, I'll be using this server here, but if you prefer different servers to the ones shown here, you can also input custom settings. I've tested custom settings that I found through a quick Google search, and they work just fine. Now, let's start the tutorial off with Gen 5, which consists of Pokemon Black, White, Black 2, and White 2. It is by far the easiest gen to set up to be able to trade Pokemon between iPhone and a DS console. Firstly, in Delta's settings, simply ensure you've selected the correct server in the DS's online multiplayer section, and then make sure those same DNS settings are entered into the primary DNS section on your Nintendo DS system. You'll obviously need to have at least one physical Gen 5 game on your DS to be able to trade with an iPhone, but at least you get to choose which one you emulate. E.g., if you only own Pokemon Black, but want a Pokemon from Black 2, which you don't own, and in real life is twice the price to actually buy on eBay compared to Pokemon Black, for example, then simply play Black 2 on emulator and trade to your physical copy of Black. Now, in terms of trading between iPhone and DS, local wireless trading will not work. It has to be done online. Before you're able to do so, you first need to register each save file's corresponding friend code into the power pad in your key items, so you obviously need to play through the games a little bit to be able to access this. If you have no friends in your power pad, you won't be able to get online. Now, Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, let's catch this random Lillipup on iPhone and nickname it Delta. Delta's about to literally go on a journey between time and space. With that out of the way and the friend codes for each game registered, go to this NPC in the upstairs of any Pokemon Center and connect online. If the settings are entered correctly on both devices, then you should have no issues getting online. Once both connected, you'll see your DS trainer appear on iPhone and vice versa, and then you can start up a trade, battle, or even a voice chat.
Hello.
Impressive, right? But of course, the goal here is to trade Delta the Lillipup we just caught over onto the actual Nintendo 3DS console. Choose a Pokemon to trade on both devices and select trade, and then as you can see here, Delta is being sent from the iPhone over onto the Nintendo 3DS. We'll check back in with Delta in a few minutes. One thing to note that I found while testing this for this video is that if you have any issues connecting online on the 3DS, then simply go to your system settings, delete your Wi-Fi connection, and then re-enter it. And if you run into any issues on Delta's side of things, then quit the app and relaunch the game. That should correct any issues. Any Pokemon you'd like to trade from iPhone to the DS console, you'll be able to do so. And of course, this also includes past event Pokemon. Since you're already on the custom Wi-Fi server on the iPhone, this also allows you to access past mystery gifts from the game startup screen. Simply choose mystery gift, receive from Nintendo WFC, and receive one Wi-Fi event mystery gift at random. Collect your gift from the delivery man in a Pokemon Center, and then repeat the process to get the remaining mystery gifts. A side note here, if you're looking for a specific event Pokemon, e.g. this 2012 Pokemon Black and White Darkrai event for example, you're gonna want to ensure before receiving to change the date on your iPhone to match the date of the event to make it line up with what was actually originally distributed back in 2012 for legitimacy's sake. It's always best to cross-reference this past event information with a secondary source, as sometimes there are discrepancies in the dates. It's probably safest setting the date on your phone to somewhere in the middle. Once a Pokemon is traded to the Nintendo DS console from Gen 5, e.g. our friend Delta here, if you downloaded the Poké Transporter app and Pokemon Bank before the Nintendo 3DS eShop closed, you'll be able to transfer these Pokemon up into Pokémon Home and into any Switch Pokemon games they're compatible with. Here's Delta being sent through the Poké Transporter into Bank, here's Delta in Bank, here's Delta being transferred into Home, here's Delta in Home, and here's Delta on the only game it's compatible with on the Nintendo Switch, Pokemon Sword and Shield. What a journey for a Pokemon that didn't actually come from an official Pokemon game. Now, Gen 4, which consists of Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, is much the same as Gen 5 in terms of setup in Delta's app settings on the iPhone. One thing that's worth mentioning for both Gen 4 and 5 is that in testing, while I was able to get trading to work with both of these servers here, old event Pokemon I was only able to receive using this server. Searching using WiiLink WFC always yielded no gifts found. However, on the DS side of things for Gen 4 is where the setup is slightly different. Unlike later DS games, which connected and worked with Wi-Fi with a more modern WPA/WPA2 security, which in layman's terms is your password-protected modern-day Wi-Fi modem, older DS games, including Gen 4 Pokemon games, work with unsecured WEP access points only. What this means is whatever connection you have saved in your DS Wi-Fi settings, for example, most likely won't be compatible with a Gen 4 game and won't let you online. Further to this, to actually get online in Gen 4, you have to set up the Wi-Fi from the startup screen of the game instead. The problem being though, due to these older DS games not being compatible with a more modern Wi-Fi security, trying to connect to your Wi-Fi from this screen simply won't work. Now, if you're lucky, you can log onto your modem router itself at home and see if there's an option to activate WEP security, but for most people, it likely won't be there as it's obsolete. So you've got two options, the safest being connect to a free Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere in your area, or if you want to do it from home to be able to trade Gen 4 Pokemon between iPhone and DS, you're gonna have to deactivate your modem security. An open network will then allow the Gen 4 games on the DS to successfully connect to the internet and ultimately talk to the iPhone. Deactivating your modem security is of course highly dangerous, and Nintendo support even offers workarounds for you. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I turned my modem's password off. This then allowed me to connect to Wi-Fi from Pokemon Pearl's menu seen here. Don't forget to enter the DNS settings. A side note, I did have issues on the DS side of things connecting to Nintendo Nintendo Wi-Fi connection in the Pokemon Center using the server we've been using so far for this video, but when I changed the settings to the WiiLink WFC server, it worked just fine. And like Gen 5, before you can connect to each other, you need to add each friend code in the power pad in your key items. Upon both devices successfully connecting, you'll see each other, as you can see on Soul Silver here on the iPhone and Pearl on the DS. One thing to note though, which cost me half an hour of filming because I'm an actual idiot, is that unlike Gen 5, when you simply talk to the character and get all the options to talk, battle, trade, etc., talking to the character in Gen 4 only shows the option to voice chat. I literally thought my games were broken or the Wi-Fi connection was being buggy, until I realized in Soul Silver on the iPhone here, you simply have to talk to the screen at the top instead, and in Pearl on the DS, you simply have to scroll down and invite. Don't judge, it's been a while. Trading is of course super simple as it should be, and you should have no issues trading whatever you like from your iPhone over onto the DS, as you can see with this full odds shiny Hoppip here. And of course, like Gen 5, you can access old event Pokemon too. Just make sure you're on a DNS server on iPhone that actually works with Mystery Gift. Now, if you want to transfer these Gen 4 Pokemon up into Home and onto your Switch, you're gonna have to first transfer it into a Gen 5 game. This requires a second DS or 3DS, as Gen 4 games don't work directly with the Poké Transporter app. It has to be Gen 5. If you'd like to see how this full process works, then watch my old video here of me transferring my shiny Mew I hunted from Gen 3 into Gen 4, Gen 5, Bank, and Home in one continuous take. God, it was stressful. Now, transferring Pokemon from Gen 3 on iPhone to a DS console is probably something you wouldn't expect is possible, but it is, and it's another testament to how much care Riley has taken into Delta. You can play through any game from Gen 3 in Delta, be it Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, and if you have a Gen 4 game on that same iPhone, you can long press it from Delta's menu, go to game settings, and virtually insert the GBA game into the dual slot, just like you could on the original DS and DS Lite. This will then allow you from the Gen 4 game's main menu to migrate up to 6 Gen 3 Pokemon into your Gen 4 game, and then recatch them in the Power Park, which is in the post game in either Sinnoh or Kanto. You can then transfer these Gen 3 Mons from iPhone to a DS using the same Wi-Fi method previously mentioned for Gen 4. One final thing to mention for any of these games is that if by chance you've started playing on an emulated Pokemon game not on an iPhone, maybe your computer for example, you can simply grab your game's save file wherever it's located, upload it to iCloud Drive, and then import the save file directly into Delta to then be able to continue that game save on your iPhone. So in summary, what all of this means is, for the first time ever, you can transfer any Pokemon you like from Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, or Unova from an iPhone to an actual Nintendo DS console, and then transfer them up into Home and onto the Switch. Now, in terms of doing all of this, there are pros and cons. The main pros are obviously accessibility and financial. For a lot of people, many of these games are inaccessible, simply because they probably never grew up with them as a kid, and trying to rebuy these as an adult from sellers online or retro video game stores is simply not financially viable, given the fact that Pokemon games in particular tend to be way more expensive than they need to be. So I'm hoping that now that trading is possible, it might bring these prices down due to the demand no longer being as high. Myself personally, my entire Shiny Living Dex collection was hunted for properly on official Nintendo hardware and software, but with the high cost of retro Pokemon games being what they are, it's understandable people turn to ROMs to hunt. And that, for a lot of people, myself included if I'm being honest, is the biggest con. For me, I only see Pokemon as legitimate only if they come from a proper cartridge and console. With trading now possible from an emulator that can let people enter cheat codes to make all Pokemon shiny, for example, what's to stop a massive influx of fake Pokemon hitting Pokemon Home accounts and the global trading system? But then again, at the end of the day, Pokemon are just bits of data on a save file that evidently can be transferred anywhere, so I guess as long as they're caught or hatched legit and not hacked in with a cheat code, who's to say if a Pokemon is real or not? I feel this is something that will definitely divide a lot of people, so I'm keen to hear your constructive opinions in the comments below. Will this be something GameFreak or Nintendo might take legal action against? Let's be honest, given their recent history, probably. Or they could just shut down Pokemon Bank and kill off this exploit for good. But for now, let's enjoy this brief moment in history where a Pokemon caught on an emulator on an iPhone can be transferred with no hacking or modding needed directly to an actual Nintendo DS and ultimately into Pokemon Home. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more Pokemon and Nintendo content from me, then please hit subscribe, leave a comment, like, and also share this video to make the YouTube algorithm gods happy. My name's is highly Instagram, but you can call me Matt. And as always, may all your shiny hunts be quick. Take care.